Good morning.
Welcome.
It's December 19th, 2021, and our talk this week is Christmas magic. Now that may surprise you because the email I sent out had another title. And then I looked at the calendar and realized Christmas is this Friday. Christmas Eve is this coming Friday. So we are talking about Christmas, and we are wishing we were meeting in person and having a Christmas candle lighting service and all of that, but we are being pandemic realistic. And so we will celebrate Christmas together this way. And I'm going to begin with reading a prayer and a spiritual, an idea and a prayer by Ernest Holmes entitled Love. And the quote is from John 4:18. And it says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear." So Ernest Holmes says there is no fear in love, and there is no liberation from fear without love. Fear is always based on the supposition that we're unprotected, rejected, friendless. If the fearful mind would entertain love and the harmony and peace that go with it, it must turn from everything that denies this love and, trusting in divine guidance, open its being to the influx of love, not just love of God, but love of everything. For love is an all-inclusive conception. And quote, he's quoting the Bible again, "I will fear no evil, for thou art with me," unquote. Today, divine love and infinite tenderness sustain me. In order that I shall not separate myself from this love, I endeavor to see it reflected in everyone and everything. I shall permit only that which is loving, kind, and true to find entrance to or exit from my consciousness. Thus shall I be assured that I am bathed in the warm glow of that love that casteth out all fear. And so it is. And a quote from The Science of Mind: "Love is the self-givingness of the spirit through the desire of life to express itself in terms of creation." So we are having Christmas.
Right.
And we're also in the midst of watching a new variant, the Omicron, grow and grow and grow. So it feels sort of like, here we go again. And we'll talk more about that. But these are challenges when, we are feeling like we can have Christmas. We couldn't even have Christmas last year as far as we were concerned with getting together with family. That wasn't an option. We didn't have the vaccines yet or anything. And so Christmas basically didn't happen last year. So here we are ready to celebrate it now. And we go, ooh, this is interesting. But I have some quotes that help me get into the Christmas spirit. The first one is by Eric Butterworth. And he says, "Christmas has little magic in it when we're looking backward to worship the child in the manger. Magic is found by looking forward to that day when our own Christ child may unfold in our lives, a time to look inward to its presence right now." So let's talk about that a little bit. We do celebrate the birth of Christ. This is the time we do it. We don't believe much literally about the story, but it doesn't matter. All religions have great stories. And so it's the time that we celebrate the birth of Jesus, and also the time that we celebrate the birth of the Christ consciousness and humankind. And it's always there, it's always available, but we have to open to that possibility, to that knowledge, to allow it to express. It's like so many gifts. They're there, but until you recognize them in you, it's like it's not there because you're not recognizing that it's there. So what does that mean to you, Bob, having the Christ consciousness within?
Well, I'm struck. First off, I'm struck with the distance I have to travel to get from what I think is a good mood and feeling good to the Christmas spirit. And what that tells me is that very often, without even realizing it, I am some distance from the idea of infinite possibility, of infinite good being expressed through me, of God in me, as me, working through me. And when I think of Christmas, when I really think about it, is a coming, that point that you get to where you realize the Christ consciousness is a now experience, not a later one. It's an awakening to the moment. It's an awakening to the truth of you. And I think I spend a lot more time asleep than I'd like to think I do, and not awake to that. And so Christmas for me, in part, is coming to terms with the distance I need to travel to be in accord with that. And I think of the manger story. And one of the things that had to happen in order for the celebration to take place is everybody who wanted to contribute or wanted to participate had a journey. They had to go a distance. And I think that's symbolic of each of us has to go a distance in mind. And we might have to go a distance in the dark, guided only by a faint light in the sky, to get to that point of recognizing the Christ consciousness in ourselves. And I think the gifts that were brought to the Christ were the gifts that needed to be opened by the persons who, in fact, were bringing the gifts. And each person brought a gift that they needed to be awake to. And each person had a journey they had to take in order to get to that. So I think Christmas is really a celebration of the awakening of the Christ consciousness in each of us. And that's, it's saddening to me to think of how much time I spend often not connected to that. When it's an essential part of our being. It's sort of like, okay, in order to be alive, you have to breathe. And then realizing, oh my God, I don't breathe much. And they say, wow, we need to take a greater spiritual breath to have greater spiritual depth. And if we don't do that, then no wonder Christmas seems to lack something.
Right. It's an idea we believe in, and
Yeah.
yet how much do we actually feel it? And I'm struck also with, and I've been, reading the comics this morning from the newspaper and everything, and remembering the childhood delight of Christmas. Well, as a child, it's everywhere, it seems. Your school celebrates it. There's gifts to the teachers, and there's parties, and of course you're all excited about what you want Santa Claus to bring, but there's lots of social gatherings and constant good cheer, and also as you're younger, and as you get older, there's less and less of that, especially with the circumstances we have now with social distancing, etc. But there's an idea that I'd like to share, and it's written by Evan Hodkins. And I don't even know who that is, but I love this quote because I think it's an idea that we can use for ourselves and hopefully those who are watching. And it says, considering the perilous nature of the present moment, and I think that speaks to this pandemic, the perilous nature of the present moment, we reckon a Merry Christmas is nowhere in sight. All the more reason to have a truly deep one instead. And all that starts by making ourselves into a manger. Christmas is that point in time when the light of heaven contradicts the chaos of earth. Therefore, let us ferociously contradict the earth as never before by not merely celebrating Christmas, but by becoming it instead. So this is the solution, not celebrating Christmas, but becoming Christmas, becoming the manger. The nativity of Christ is the story of God wanting to get inside humanity. Jesus was the prototype for that experiment. Let us avail ourselves accordingly to be the embodiment of God every single day of our worldly lives. Let us from this moment forward and without the slightest hesitation be Christmas.
It's beautiful, beautifully written too.
So how do we be the manger? Be the birthplace, the bed place of the Christ consciousness.
I think before my son was born, one of the things that we did was prepare a space for him. And we didn't prepare a manger but we prepared a space. And I wonder how many of us prepare a space for our own spiritual awakening. How many of us create a sacred space, a space that is important and valuable. Some time ago, I remember Judith saying to me that she needed a space for meditation. I thought, what do you need a space for? A sacred space. And then, and so finally I noticed that she had set up some things and icons and things that reminded her of her spirituality. But I thought, wow, that's interesting. She's created a space for spiritual practice. And I didn't even realize that spiritual practice required space. And so the question is, are we creating a place for our spiritual practice? And the other thing I think that's connected to this is that the celebration of the birth of Jesus is a celebration of a very fragile thing that requires lots of care and attention. And in order for the Christ to be fully recognized, one has to take good care of it. One has to be prepared to take care of it. I think we treat our spirituality sometimes as if it's accidental or incidental, that it's really not something that requires our ongoing attention and intention. And so I think maybe what we could do is to look at our spirituality more like a child with infinite possibility that needs our love and care. And the love and care we give to that comes back to us fully born as a divine expression. And I just think that this manger scene is more than the birth of a child. Part of the manger story, and it's a story, is there was no room for the baby.
In the end, no room at the
Yeah,
end.
well, isn't that interesting?
Right. Yeah.
The-
And that's our lives, right?
Well,
There's
there's
no room.
no room for it. And right now with the pandemic, there's not even a room we can sit in comfortably and feel safe in. So one of the problems with our spirituality for human beings is that they don't have room for it. They don't have time for it. They don't want to donate to it. They don't want to contribute to it, but they sure would like it to work for them.
Right. And there's no space for it.
Right.
One of the things I wanted to tell you about meditation space is when you do have a particular place where you always do your meditation, it develops a vibration
Mhm.
that is different from the other spaces in your home. As a matter of fact, we had a meditation teacher decades and decades ago. And if you walked into her apartment and walked through it, you could actually feel the place where she meditated, because it's just all of a sudden it's like, ooh, this feels good
Mhm.
here. The vibration stays. It's really interesting. But you're right. It is the most important part of our life, our spiritual connection with all that is, with the truth of life. And yet we go about taking care of business, and even with our busyness with Christmas and shopping and sending gifts and things like that. And we don't take care of the manger, the birthplace, to just honor that Christ consciousness that is in you. And it gets in you by it was always in you, but you may not have been aware of it. And just turning your focus, your awareness to it is what lets it grow and become a live being.
Yeah, we put a wreath on our coffee table. We don't have room for a tree this year because we live in a small space. And so and Judith bought a beautiful wreath and then a candle. And what's amazing is when you light the candle, the wreath comes alive. It's always been the wreath that it is. But what happens when you give it light, when you give life your light, when you give your spirituality your focus and your light, is it wakes up, and it wakes up your heart.
It does. And candles are a way that we infer spirituality and
Mhm.
sacredness. And so they just make us feel sacred. Probably the association of going to churches and lighting candles and having the candles lit. But nevertheless, whatever you can do to feel the spirit of Christmas, to make your home the manger of the birthplace, That's the essence of Christmas.
Maybe we could have Christmas Day be the model for the year rather than the thing that we do once a year. That if we were to
Mm,
have Christmas be the model, every day is a celebration of the Christ spirit in each of us.
really?
If every day were Christmas for us, then it would be a very different occasion than warming up for, dressing up for, and preparing for a single day, followed by, way too much eating, not nearly enough gifts, but and and I think sometimes even a letdown that it's over, because really what Christmas is the beginning of something really very grand, not something
Yes.
that ends when you unwrap your presents.
Yeah, or ends with the end of the year. That's true. Well, Ernest Holmes said something that if we could all remember, we could take this with us for the rest of the year, all through the year. God, the Divine Father, never had but one son. That son is capitalized. This son is being born at every season, in every place, through all races and all nations. Every birth is a divine event. Every conception is immaculate. Every child who is born into the world represents the Son of the Eternal Father. So that's just what you're talking about, if we could remember it.
Yeah, a great example of this is a story that's been repeated many times, and a film was made of it. I watched it last night again, which was World War One. And there's a battle line. The Germans are on one side, the Scots, the English, the Americans are on the other side, and they're shooting each other. They're killing each other because this is war. And there's a quiet. So one of the Scotsmen takes out his bagpipes and plays a Christmas piece
Because it's Christmas
because
Eve,
it's
right?
Christmas, and he has no intention of stopping the war by singing or playing a piece on his bagpipes. And then on the other side, you hear a response to that, which is a Christmas carol. Well, anyway, the story, I'm sure you've all heard it by now, is
Oh,
that,
Holy Night, right?
right, in the German army and the Scots and the Irish and the Russian Americans and the French and everybody else, they all get together. They exchange bread, and they have a truce. But when they create the truce, they're doing exactly what we need to do in the combat of our life, which is declare a peace, not accept that because battle has been going on, that we have to continue to have it be a battle. Now, the second thing that happens, which is really interesting, is, and this is a true part of the story, is that after this was done, the next day they were supposed to go back to fighting and they couldn't.
They couldn't shoot at each
They
other
couldn't shoot at each other.
because they had met each other and even
Yeah,
exchanged gifts
and
and
shared
sung
wine and
Christmas
candy
carols.
and cigarettes and everything else that they had. So, what's true is, as soon as we wake up to our own inner humanity and we allow ourselves to wake up to the humanity of others, it's just impossible for us to be so hateful and so cruel and so dangerous. And so the danger that we all face is not waking up to our own nature. And by being asleep to that nature, terrible things can happen in the process.
Right. That reminds me of something else I read this morning. Byron Katie was saying all it takes to end a war is for one person to refuse to fight.
Mhm.
And she's talking about relationships and every other thing, but you can only have a fight if two parties choose to fight. But if one chooses peace instead, there can be no battle.
Mhm.
There can be no battle. So it's a wonderful true story, a wonderful true story. Um, and so human, so human. This, oh, it was Silent Night was the song these, and
Mhm.
that was originally written in German.
Yeah,
Heilige Nacht, Stille Nacht, and
showing off your German again.
same translation in English. So it was written first in German, and the Germans sang it in German, and the British and the
French.
Scotch and sang it in English, and the French sang it in French.
And the French brought wine.
Yes, of course.
And once they all had wine and they all could sing the same song, you know,
Well, I don't think you can sing Silent Night, Holy Night, without being reminded of the holy, which is
mhm.
reminding of the Christ consciousness that is in all of us. And so what a wonderful story. And so let's remember that with ourselves. I notice with all the Christmas music I'm hearing on the radio, none of them are Christmas carols.
Mhm.
And while I don't personally believe in the story literally, I still love the Christmas story. I still
Mhm.
love the Christmas carols. That you love what you grew up with, and what was sacred and holy when you were a child is still sacred and holy.
Well, I think there has been a lot of challenge to the story being true. And the challenge to the story being true is that people don't want to hear it anymore because it's not true. But what's true is the story behind the story, the inside
Yes,
story.
yes,
The
yes.
truth is that our spirituality needs to be cared for and lovingly and tenderly given birth to and tended to. And it's a fragile thing, and yet it has great strength. And it's a fragile thing that brings out our great strength if we would allow it to. And so I think, what I was seeing, at work, the patients like to watch MTV, and so there's Christmas twerking, which somehow seems to be the antithesis, although it does eventually lead to birth somewhere. But it's really the antithesis of Christmas. Like, wow, I didn't realize Christmas could go this far out on a limb with so few clothes. And but it does. But
Uh,
I think it's people's the cynicism. But the problem with the cynicism is it stops being about Christmas and it starts being about you. And so the Christ spirit, the Christ consciousness, the Christmas that we're celebrating is that which is being given birth to in us, in each of us.
mhm. So let's make this Christmas. Let's make our hearts, our homes, a manger for the birth of the Christ consciousness. And then we don't have to be concerned about how many parties we are or are not going to, how many celebrations there are. The celebration can be in our heart. And we know that that's where the Christ child
Mhm.
lives and expresses, and we can enjoy that oh holy night, that and make it a really special occasion for us, regardless of what's going on in the world. So that's what we choose for our Christmas.
Right.
We hope that you have a merry one as well.
Well
So,
done.
so let's close with a prayer,
Okay.
okay? Okay.
So let's know together that deep within each of us, there is that which we call spirit, we call God, we call the light, we call infinite intelligence, and that it is always operating, unfolding, erupting, emerging, revealing itself in and through us in all of our activities. And today we say yes to that spirit. We say yes to that birth. We say yes to that divine challenge to be alive spiritually.
We allow it to awaken us to the holiness that is in every sacred moment. We allow the manger to be the birthplace and the home and the nurturing place of that Christ consciousness. We see it in every person. We recognize it in every other human being, and know that as we greet each person, we are greeting the divinity of the Christ within them. This allows us to love everyone in the world, and we give thanks for this understanding, for this knowledge. We release, and together we say,
And so it is.
and so it
And
is.
it is so.
And so now, before we stop the recording, I'm going to share our website, where we are inviting all of our viewers today and later,
And every day.
anyone who sees it, because we post this on YouTube. We have a channel on YouTube that is CSL Palm Beaches, and that's our website also, cslpalmbeaches.org.
If you miss one of our talks and you'd like to catch it again, or you'd like to share it with somebody, you can go to this website and
No, oh, go to YouTube
go to YouTube and you can watch any number of them.
and send them, share them.
Yes, and you'll see us when we were younger and thinner and
Well, a year and a half younger anyway. Okay. All right. So any rate, on this site, cslpalmbeaches.org, if you click ways to donate, over to the right, this pops up and shows you ways that you may donate to our Center for Spiritual Living of the Palm Beaches. And so we thank you for that. And so now we will stop the recording.